Alrighty, so we're back. Sorry, I've been going out on a tangent a lot, talking a lot. Let's get down to business. I'm going to show you the 16 teams. I'm going to show you the 26-man roster for each of these teams. I may contemplate, and this may be down the road, of doing the 40-man roster for these 16 teams. That way, we can give a chance for a nice group of ball players to be involved in some fashion. But we'll get to that another time. Let's introduce you to the 16 teams, starting with the Giants. Of course, Barry Bonds. I mean, there's not, much else I can say. One of the greatest players of all time. I know people have their reservations about steroids, but we'll get into that in another day. But, you got Barry Bonds. Trevor Hoffman. Obviously, he was a Padre most, if not all of his, his career. I guess he did Milwaukee. Yeah, I think I remember that. But, all but 2 years with the Padres. Then Milwaukee. He's never played for an original 16-team team. And so after, getting this roster together, I think he fits perfectly as a Giant. So Giants fans, you have probably the second greatest closer, third greatest closer of all time. Christy Mathewson, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, and probably along with, like the Walter Johnsons and Cy Youngs of the world, Grover Alexander, that top-notch, Mount Rushmore of his era type of pitcher. Willie Mays, one of the greatest of all time, Willie McCovey, and I'm going to skim through, maybe talk about the first, few guys here, but Mel Marichal, Mel Lott, these are all Giant greats, Matt Williams. Most of these are Giant greats. Like I mentioned in the previous video, you might see somebody who's ever played for the Giants, like a Trevor Hoffman. Actually, J.R. Richard never played for the Giants. He only played for an expansion team, and now he's a long reliever for the Giants. So, and Eno Slaughter, I believe if he played with the Giants, it was very little, if not at all. As I mentioned in the last video, the Cardinals were packed, and so I was able to move him to the Giants. So you might see a few players like that, so excuse that, but that was the only way I was able to, get him in the league. So let's go here to the Dodgers, and just to reiterate, whenever I upload the roster, if you're interested in doing this in a franchise mode, the expansion teams really weren't touched at all. So if you want them to be ready and all that, it's going to be a lot of work. This is really more meant for playing the, schedule that I'll have and I'll release, and using the 16 teams in exhibition and just, having a good time with it. So definitely apologize about that, and I apologize to all the fans of the expansion teams that unfortunately I won't be using due to the amount of time I have. So with that being said, the Dodgers, Sandy Koufax. Actually, let's go back to the Giants. These faces are good. I got to find the creator. One of someone that I've spoken to, great guy. Good stuff. Obviously, the legends are going to look like themselves, but focus on some of the, So, look pretty good. Sandy Koufax, I mean, that's probably the best Sandy Koufax I've seen. You got Jackie Robinson, Duke Snyder, Gary Sheffield, played for many teams. And even of the original 16 teams, he's played for the Yankees, he's played for the Tigers, the Dodgers, of course, and the Braves, and he fit right in with the Dodgers. Adrian Beltre, Played for the Dodgers, I believe, a few years. Had a monster season or two, so he fits great with them. And got other Clayton Kershaw, Mike Piazza. You know, the Mets are not on here, and of course he was a Dodger for a handful of years, and really was on the rise with them. So it was a great fit. Now Don Sutton. Now Beltran. Beltran's never played for the Dodgers. I don't think. He's the majority of his career was with Kansas City and the Mets. And of course, none of those two teams are in there. He did play for the Yankees for a year or two, the Cardinals, but those teams are pretty stacked. And yeah, fit him in the Dodgers. That was my way of being able to keep him in. I'm a big Beltran fan as a fellow Puerto Rican, you know, and I love watching him play, you know, back in the day. So I put him in the Dodgers. Gil Hodges, legendary Dodger. Actually, let's go back. Beltran, nice photo there. Gil Hodges. Goldschmidt. Has he ever played? I don't think he's ever played for the Dodgers. My, you know, anything past 2020, I'm not good at. I haven't really followed baseball as closely as I should in the last, you know, 6 years or so. I know he played for the Cardinals, but the Cardinals were stacked at first base. So I got Goldschmidt in there. He's the backup first baseman. So for context, okay, that goes to show on how powerful these teams are. You got Paul Goldschmidt, I believe he's a former MVP. You know, he's got all these accolades, and he's your backup first baseman. Pee Wee Reese, Roy Campanella. Campanella will be the backup catcher. Campanella is a hell of a player, excuse me, and he's your backup catcher. Yep, and then here's Wetland. I believe he'll be the setup man for Jansen. And my philosophy when it comes to players, unfortunately, with the 16-team league, I could not, involve the Negro League players. I believe I have like two, Satchel Paige and I believe Smokey Joe Williams, if I'm not mistaken, that were just, Negro League players. Definitely, if I had a 30 or 32-team league, I would have definitely added them to strengthen the league. And a lot of the players that played the majority of their career before 1900, I didn't add them as well. I would have had it been a 30 or 32-team league to strengthen it, just like with the Negro Leagues. And so, your Cap Ansons and I think Milky Welches and, guys from that era, which I know a thing or two about, I did not include them. Because then, by doing that, maybe I will have to leave out a Mookie Betts, which I know a lot of people know more who he is than, let's say, a Cap Anson. So that's my decision on that. Darryl Strawberry. Yeah, that kind of looks like him. Dazzy Vance. Yeah, that's a pretty good one right there. Kirk Gibson. They're better than the Tigers in the sense of, the players that I had. So I decided to put him in the Dodgers. I know he was more of a Tiger, but I put him here. And there you go. That's the... Oh, and another thing I want to mention, overalls for all 26 men, for all 16 teams, will be between 90 and 99. I wanted to do that to keep every team elite, to keep a balance. There's not... if you think of the best team in the league and the worst team, there's not that difference in talent. And let's say, the major leagues and any of the leagues, basketball, football, baseball, what have you, it's a balanced league, and, the quote-unquote worst team in the league can be the best team in the league on any given day. And that's the way I wanted to do it. That way, you just never know, and it's unpredictable. So let's go to the next team. Let's go to the Cardinals. Stack team here. Bob Gibson. I'm a big fan of Bob Gibson. One of the most intimidating pitchers of all time. I believe he's going to be the ace for the Cardinals. Rogers Hornsby. One of the greatest power hitters, early power hitters of his day. Probably the greatest second base power hitter of all time. If not, he's top 3. Mark McGwire. Again, in the beginning of my fandom, one of the most polarizing players. And of course, people are divided on him. Stan Musial, definitely one of the greatest Cardinals of all time. Only played for the Cardinals, so perfect. Albert Pujols, one of the greatest Latin players, one of the greatest players in general of all time. Just a complete monster. And to think, prime Mark McGwire, prime Pujols, with Roger Hornsby, and this gentleman right here, Larry Walker. Larry Walker played the majority of his career with the Expos and with the Rockies. He did play, I believe, the last couple of years with the Cardinals. Of course, the Expos and the Rockies are not in the league, so that's where I try to fit him with the Cardinals, and he'll be playing for them. Nolan Arenado, played most of his career with the Rockies and Cardinals, so that's where he fits there. Dizzy Dean, player from the 20s and 30s. Johnny Mize, first base. Another thing I want to mention, the designated hitter will most likely be either an outfielder, since there's 6 of them, or most likely either a first baseman or third baseman. Reason for that is, of course, the designated hitter is known for one or two things: a power hitter or a great hitter that just, their defense is not excellent. So, or maybe they have an injury to where they can't field as well. So you'll notice on the lineups that the DH most likely will be one of the outfielders or one of the corner infielders for that reason. So I believe Johnny Mize is the DH for the Cardinals, or McGwire. I think it's McGwire. I'm not sure. But anyway, we can get to that in another video, but just for context. And that's why I easily chose a DH, because there's so many great hitters. I think it'd be a crime to not include the designated hitter in this. And so here's some more players here for the Cardinals. Again, most of these players have had a decent, if not most, all the career with the Cardinals. Again, Willie Randolph, I don't believe you ever played for the Cardinals. If you did, very little. But, being a Yankee fan, I wanted to include him. So I put him in as the backup second baseman for the Cardinals. So that's the Cardinals right there. And we got the Pirates. Fellow Puerto Rican Roberto Clemente, probably the greatest Puerto Rican player, the most iconic Puerto Rican player of all time, maybe the most iconic Latin player of all time. And unfortunately, his life was cut short, I believe, at age 36. Imagine if he played his career to 40. He had exactly 3,000 hits. So he could easily had, anywhere between, 3,400, 3,500 hits, if he stayed consistent and played another 3-4 years, and probably the greatest right field arm of all time. So that being said, there's that. John Dowd. So let me touch base on this. MVP 05, for those of you gamers that played it for the PlayStation 2. In my opinion, is probably the greatest pound for pound baseball game of all time. And as we know, Barry Bonds was not in the game for reasons that I want to get into right now. And John Dowd was created to kind of emulate Barry Bonds. Now, I wanted to include him, and this is kind of like my tip of the cap, my tribute to video games and baseball and MVP 05, so I wanted to include him. Obviously, in the game in MVP 05, he's a left fielder and lefty like Barry Bonds, but I wanted to switch that a bit. I felt like for third baseman, the Pirates were a little bit weak when it comes to power. And so you're welcome, Pirates fans. I put Dowd here, I made him a third baseman, and I believe to switch it up, I made him a switch hitter, which I know in the game he's a lefty. He's a fictional player, one of only two fictional players in the whole league. The way I see it is, this is also a tip of the cap to the My Player mode that the show has had for probably 10 years or more. Obviously, My Player, you could go in as a position player or a pitcher, as most of you know. And so I have a position player, which is John Dowd, and I have a pitcher, which I'll get to whenever I get to that team. And those are, quote unquote, the two My Players within the league. Other than that, the other 414 players are players that have played in the league and are legendary and great and elite, or any of the three. And so there's that. John Dow probably will be the cleanup hitter, with the stats I gave him. Honus Wagner, greatest shortstop of all time. Smokey Joe Williams, like I mentioned before, one of the 2, 3, or 4 Negro League players that I did put in. I felt that the Pirates, and no offense, the Pirates pitching rotation was a bit weak, and I wanted to strengthen it a little bit, so I opted to get probably the second greatest Negro League pitcher of all time behind Satchel Paige, and to give him to be the ace of the Pirates. So it's going to be really interesting on how that's going to go. Bill Dickey, obviously, he's a Yankee. Of course, Yankees have a wealth of catchers in their history. And I already have the 2 catchers, so I want to find a spot for Bill Dickey, and he'll be the starting catcher for the Pirates. Another example of making moves so that I don't leave someone like a Bill Dickey, which I believe he played in the 30s with the Yankees, maybe Murderers Row, if I'm not mistaken, but in that era. John Franco, another example, played with the Mets for the majority of his career. He did play with the Reds, but I believe I had the setup man and closer for them. So found a spot for him here. He'll be the closer for the Pirates. Burley Grimes, I believe, is another example. He might have had some years with the Pirates, not totally sure, but I believe most of his tenure was with the Dodgers. Here's a good one, Todd Helton. I grew up watching Todd Helton, hell of a ball player. Of course, played all of his career with the Rockies. And let me just make sure. Yeah, played all of his career with the Rockies. Obviously, the Rockies are not in the league. For me, he's a hell of a first baseman. Wanted him to be a starter. And as I was looking at all the team's first basemen, I wanted to keep Helton in the National League since he was in the National League his whole career. And I think he's a great fit for the Pirates. So there's that. Ralph Kiner, legendary Pirate. Willie Stargell, probably, will be the DH for the team. Vic Willis, I believe he played most of his career with the Braves. Jeff Kent, another example, and that's a great Jeff Kent. Never played for the Pirates. He played a lot of years with the Giants and Dodgers, but they had a wealth of second basemen as well. Also wanted a solid second baseman for the Pirates, and Jeff Kent's a pretty good offensive second baseman, so it's a pretty good. Dave Parker, hell of a Pirate. On the team here, Wilma Cooper, I believe he's a former Pirate. Dwight Gooden, most of his career with the New York Mets. He played for the Yankees, some as well, for the Indians. Those pitching rotations and bullpens were stacked. And I wanted to keep him in the National League since, he was more known as a Met. And so, I mean, no offense. Again, the Pirates' star rotation was a bit weak for me, so it was a perfect spot to put him in. Dwight Gooden. McCutchen, I almost left him out, but I wanted to keep him in. Great player in the 2010s. I know he's played for other teams, but if he ever goes in the Hall of Fame, he'll definitely be a Pirate. So I'm glad I was able to get him in. Armando Benitez will be the setup man. Artie Vaughn, definitely played a lot of years with the Pirates. Babe Adams, another Pirate. Ryan Braun, here's another one. Ryan Braun will be a backup outfielder. So again, if you're a Ryan Braun fan and a Pirates fan, I guess at the same time, he would be in the bench. So that just goes to show you how stacked these 16 teams are. Paul Wainer, hell of a ball player. He's on the team. Garrett Cole. I was divided on whether to put him in the Yankees or Pirates. The Yankees have a pretty solid starting rotation and bullpen, so I decided to give the Pirates some help and make him a Pirate. Bill Mazeroski, let's not go with that. If you know, you know. Pie Trainer, Hall of Famer, Jason Kendall. Again, he may not be one of the greatest catchers of all time. Maybe he is. I looked him up in the list, and maybe he's in the top 30 in catchers. I grew up, with him in the league as a Pirate, so at least I wanted him, to be a backup catcher. And then Jerry Koosman, which I believe he never played for the Pirates. He played a lot of time with the Mets. But hey, there's another guy in the bullpen that could be useful. All right, Big Red Machine, Cincinnati Reds. Johnny Bench, greatest catcher of all time. Enough said. Ken Griffey, now obviously more known as a Mariner. The Mariners are not in the league. He did play, I believe, 8 to 10 years with the Reds. Unfortunately, he was injury plagued. Had probably 1 or 2 very solid years with the Reds, but was plagued with injuries and really never had that second half of a career that he should have had. So this is a lead that will give him a chance to do that in a Reds uniform. So he'll be, definitely be the centerpiece of the lineup for the Big Red Monsters, Joe Morgan, part of the Big Red Machine. Frank Robinson was debating on whether to put him in the Orioles or Reds, and ultimately opted to put him in the Reds. So there's that. Tom Seaver, more known as a Met, had his prime years with the Mets, but did have some time with the Reds, had a couple of, good seasons, solid seasons. So it was a no-brainer. Just like the Pirates rotation, the Reds rotation, was not too hot. So it was definitely an easy decision to make Tom Seaver the ace of the Cincinnati Reds. Aroldis Chapman, closer, that's a no-brainer. Pete Rose, in my opinion, probably the greatest Red of all time. And that's a pretty good Pete Rose right there. Definitely got to credit the creator. I'm going to have to find him. Kid Nichols, I believe most of his career was as a Brave, but the Braves rotation probably within the top 3 or 4, maybe the best of the whole league. So no room for him. Decided to put him in the Reds to give the Reds some help and put balance in the league. Barry Larkin, grew up watching him, great Red. Scott Rowland was debating whether to put him on the Phillies or Reds. Opted to put him in the Reds, even though I believe his numbers with the Phillies were a little bit better. But we'll see. Of course, there's Mike Schmidt, starting third baseman for the Phillies. So, of course, I'm not going to start rolling over Schmidt. So I decided to put him in the Reds. That way he can start in third. I grew up watching Rowland. So a little bit biased on putting him to start third. Joey Votto, first baseman. Let's see, either he or Tony Perez will be DH. I forgot which one it is, but he'll be in the starting lineup. And just to reiterate, I know I mentioned about the overalls, 90 to 99. When it comes to the lineup, the starting lineup, overalls will be between 95 and 99. I wanted to differentiate, I wanted to level a little bit the bench players and the starting players. So bench players will be from 90 to 94. The starting players will be from 95 to 99. And I believe I did the same with the pitchers. I'll probably get into that once I get to the starting rotations. But yeah, Perez Ravado's the DH, and then the other one's playing first. Zach Greinke, hell of a ball player. Most of his career with the Royals, had good years with Houston and Arizona. Unfortunately, none of those teams are in the league. So I'm like, after looking at the rosters, I'm like, he fits very well as now a Cincinnati Red. As a solid, I believe, fourth or fifth starter. There's Carl Mays, Juan Soto, and ironically enough, he's going to be on the bench because, as you can see, his overall is less than 95. So again, if you're a Juan Soto fan and a Reds fan, and he's, in the lineup that I set up, he's in your bench, it goes to show on how stacked these teams are. Once again, I wouldn't be saying that a lot, but Frank Tanana played for the Angels a lot of years. I wanted to keep him in the American League, but it was hard to see where to put him. And so I opted to put him in the Reds to help out. David Wright, a career that was shortened, had his career gone the length that it should have, would have been a Hall of Famer. And, that's my respect to, the Mets right there. Great player, great ball player. He could have been, if his career, if he would have been healthier and lasted longer, he could have been, their version of our Derek Jeter, clean cut, loyal, captain kind of guy. I think Jeter's a better player, but definitely a great ball player, and fits very well with the Reds and will be the backup third baseman. Epirixi played for the Reds many years, I think during those late 30s, early 40s when the Reds had pretty good teams. Walters, I believe, is a Red. He'll be in the bullpen. Jacob deGrom, bullpen. Hard throwing right there. I know he played a year, pretty much his whole career with the Mets. Last couple of years with the Rangers. But he'll be with Cincinnati. Brett Boone. Cordero will be the setup man. Ed Roush, former Red. Greg Vaughn. He was in that era that, where my family was at. That's why he's on there. But he'll be the backup left fielder. Fregosi and Lombardi. And that's the Cincinnati Reds. All right. Chicago Cubs. Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub. Probably one of the greatest, along with like the A-Rods, if you count him as a shortstop, offensive shortstops of all time, power hitting shortstops. Nolan Ryan. So Nolan Ryan is someone I moved around from team to team, and last minute I put him in the Cubs. So you're welcome, Cubs fans. As most of you know, Nolan Ryan played for the Mets. He played for the Angels, the Astros, and the Rangers, which ironically enough are the four teams, their first four expansion teams, technically, they came into the league, And Nolan Ryan never played for an original 16 team, despite being in the league for, 24, 25 years. So he was probably one of the biggest pitchers that never played for an original 16 team. So he was really a true free agent. I was going to put him on the Yankees, I'll admit, but I'll tell you what I did with that once I get to the Yankees. I moved him around to another team and ultimately made him a Cub and make him the ace for the Cubs. And so there's that. Lee Smith, probably one of the greatest closers of all time. In that 80s, 90s era, whenever the closer was becoming prominent. Sammy Sosa, I mean, talk about my fandom. This is my bread and butter, along with the Mark McGwire's and Barry Bonds and Ken Griffey's of the world. Um, People have their opinions about steroids and all that. I'm not going to get into that. They entertain me. They hook me. They're a big reason why I love the game of baseball. So, Sammy Sosa. Mordecai Brown, former Cub, hell of a ball player. Andre Dawson, that was an easy one. Ryan Sandberg, Ron Santo, Gabby Harnett, all just, when you think of the Cubs, this is it, okay? Gabby Harnett, one of the greatest catchers of all time with the Cubs in that World War II, I believe, era, maybe a bit prior to that. Andres Galarraga. Again, with my fandom, one of the top power hitters, high average, Latin players. Love the Big Cat. Played many years with the Rockies and Expos, kind of like Larry Walker. And since I wasn't using the Cap Anson, which he would have been first base here had I used him, after moving and trying to figure out who's going to go where, I made a last minute choice, put Galarraga as first baseman. So, he'll be hitting a lot of homers in the friendly confines of Wrigley Field. Frank Jenkins, Canadian, apparently, from Cubs player, great ball player. I mean, he's going to be probably number 3 on the starting rotation. Billy Williams played a lot of years for the Cubs and for the Athletics. I see him more as a Cub, and Hack Wilson. For those who don't know, played like in the 20s and 30s, has the record for the most RBIs in a season. And let me remind you, this is back in the days where a full season was 154 games and not 162. And I believe that record is 190 or 191 RBIs. Yes, look it up. And so ever since I've known that fact, I've always been a Hack Wilson fan and definitely wanted to make sure that he was in the Cubs. Had maybe 4 or 5 monster years, and then unfortunately his rest of his career he dropped off. But this league is about focusing on the primes of players, not really more the overall. Yeah, I am looking at the overall, but I'm also putting a microscope on the prime of these players. So that's why Hack Wilson was an easy decision. Kevin Brown, someone that I grew up watching. I don't think he ever played for the Cubs, but he fit well. Alfonso Soriano, had him going back and forth between the Yankees and Cubs and other teams. Ultimately, I put him in the Cubs. We'll be backing up for Ryan Sandberg. So it's a good guy on the bench with some pop. If, let's say, someone on your team is not performing well, you need that bat. Hell of a ball player for that. 412 home runs, sneaky power. And so, yeah. Hippo Vaughn, I believe he's a former Cub. Vinny Castilla, another one of those guilty pleasures due to my fandom. Played most of his career with Colorado, part of that Colorado core. I'm looking here, he did had a couple of years with Atlanta, but Atlanta's kind of stacked 2 third basemen, and you probably know who they are. So he fit pretty well being the backup third baseman for Ron Santo. Kiki Collier, former Cub. Keith Hernandez, he was one of the guys that I almost left out. Didn't want to. I had to take someone else out, forgot who it was for him. Yes, I know he's a former Cardinal, but if you saw, when I did the Cardinals, was McGwire and Mize, so 2 bona fide power hitters. So I found him a spot in the Cubs. and probably along with Don Mattingly, two of the greatest defensive first basemen of all time, but also can do something with the stick as well. So he is with the Cubs. Randy Myers will be the setup man. Moises Alou, former Giant, former Cub, fit well with the Cubs there, so I got him on there. Pretty good players there. Matlock, I believe he's a former Met. Reichel, I think his last name is pronounced. I believe he had most of his time with the Cubs, so he fits well. Kevin Napier, that's another, I grew up watching him, so that's why he's a 90 overall and will be in the bullpen. Just someone that I'm familiar with, so that's why he's in there. Bill Dallin, I believe he's a former shortstop. Let me fix his number here, so I definitely apologize. Let's just put, I don't want any zeros. Let's just put number 40. Sorry about that. All right, let's go back here. Dallin, and let's see who else. And there's one more ball player, Russell Martin. Again, someone in my later years of my prime fandom. Great catcher. Wanted to fit him in there, so there he is as a backup catcher for the Cubs. And there's your Chicago Cubs. And two more teams in the National League. The Phillies. Grover. Okay, so Grover, I believe he's fourth in wins. Greatest Phillies pitcher of all time. Easy, to make him the ace. Jerry Carter. All right, here's another one. Played most, if not all of his career with Expos and Mets. Might have played with the third team. If he did, it was a very, short stint. Of course, those two teams are not in the league. And so he fit perfect with the Phillies as the starting catcher. So once again, you're welcome, Philly fans. Gary Carter is your starting catcher. Bryce Harper, of course, half of his career with the Nationals, who are not in the league, and is having a very solid second half of his career with the Phillies. He and Trout, two generational talents. Unfortunately, injuries have plagued them for them to really reach their full potential. But of course, in this league, and FYI, there's going to be, it's an exhibition league. I will have injuries on, but if someone gets injured, it'll be just for that game. So let's use Bryce as an example. If there's a ball game, he gets hurt, he'll miss the rest of the game. The next game, he'll be in the lineup. He won't miss any more games because, why, So, anyway, Mike Schmidt, that's probably Mr. Philly right there, greatest third baseman of all time. Easy one. Billy Wagner, yeah. Oh, yeah, Billy Wagner. Only a couple of years with the Phillies, but of course he played with Houston and the Mets, so why not? Let's put him as a closer of the Phillies. Okay, so going back, I believe I mentioned this in one of my prior videos. Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio, as you see right there. And of course, Tony Gwynn. I wanted to keep very legendary teammates together, especially the ones that were teammates in expansion teams. This is a perfect example of that. Bagwell and Biggio played with each other in the Astros for, 12 to 15 years. I don't have the number on the top of my head, but it seemed like their whole, time in the major league. And so I wanted to keep them together, and I had to make some moves, and thankfully I was able to keep them together. So Astros fans, if you love that tandem of Biggio and Bagwell, you might want to become a Phillies fan for this league because that's where they're at. And of course, Billy Wagner, who was a very prominent Houston Astro closer. That being said, Tony Gwynn, as I mentioned, Padre his whole career. I wanted to fit him somewhere. I believe the two teams I was debating was the Dodgers and the Phillies. I was able to find 6 outfielders for the Dodgers, and I said, so I fit him with the Phillies, and there's that as well. Steve Carlton, um, Philadelphia Philly. I mean, one of the all-time greats. No matter if the Phillies were horrible or great, I mean, he was going to be the ace. And speaking of him being the ace, he'll probably be the second starter. So goes to show. Francisco Lindor, yes, he did play for Cleveland all those years. I actually try to put him in the Indians or Guardians, excuse me. But I had two shortstops there, so I moved him to the Phillies. Former fellow Puerto Rican, so I definitely know he's going to be, as long as he stays healthy, a future Hall of Famer, whether it's a Met or as a Cleveland Guardian. Wanted him in the league. And there he is. And I know you guys are thinking about Rollins and Utley. They'll be in there as well. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you have Dick Allen. I believe you played for the Phillies as well. Chuck Klein, legendary Philly. Robin Roberts was the ace for the Phillies for, I believe, in the 50s, late 40s to the late 60s. He'll be the third starter, fourth starter. Kurt Schilling, grew up watching him as a Philadelphia Philly. Hell of a pitcher. And sorry, just got a text from my lovely wife. Answer that real quick, okay? Bobby Abreu, just like Keith Hernandez, I had him in and out. I opted to keep him because, again, he was part of my core fandom. So even if it is as a bench player, I wanted him to be represented. Roy Halladay. Halladay, if I'm not mistaken, will be in the bench. No, he'll be a starting pitcher. Probably the 4 and 5 right here. So Philadelphia Phillies, your 4 and 5 pitchers are right here. Two very popular pitchers in the Phillies, mid to late 2000s, early 2010s. They'll be your 4 and 5, okay? Setup, Jeff Rendon. Ryan Howard, again, core fandom of mine. A monster football player. Unfortunately, I believe his career was derailed due to injuries. Could have been a 550, 600 home run ball player. He'll be in the bench. So, hey, a Ryan Howard who's hit 58 home runs one year, I think 57 another. What your, bench? Jimmy Rollins, easy one there. Al Rosen, played most of his career, all of his career, if I'm not mistaken, with the Indians, Guardians. Couldn't find any room for him there, and ultimately found him a spot here in the Phillies as a backup third baseman. Had a lot of power, short prime, so great bench player for the Phillies. Ashburn, Cliff Lee, Rogers, Utley, so to round it off. And to finish off the National League, we got the Braves, Hank Aaron, had the home run record for so many years. One of the greatest men in baseball. Of course, he'll be in the Braves. Greg Maddux, part of the big three that I grew up watching. Definitely there. Eddie Matthews, pretty much the Lou Gehrig to Hank Aaron. 512 homers, definitely not too crazy. Definitely, the number 3 to Aaron's number 4. Craig Kimbrell, that's an easy one. Warren Spahn, 363 wins. I believe I have him as the second pitcher, with Greg Maddux being the ace. This is probably going to be the best pitching team, starting rotation 1 through 5. Chipper Jones will probably be the DH for Matthews. I have them both in the starting lineup. You know how to put one DH, so but I have them both in the starting lineup. Jose Altuve played his whole career with the Astros. Wanted to fit him. I know there's that scandal with the trash can and all that, but still a hell of a ball player, future Hall of Famer whenever his career is over. Wanted to include him, and the Braves was a fit, and so that's why he's a Brave. Andrew Jones, Fred McGriff, Dale Murphy, Tom Glavine. I mean, this is just Braves baseball right here. Joe Torre, Tulowitzki. Have him as a starting shortstop because he had some pop. Was a pretty good fielder as well. And so that's why I have him in there. So he's, I believe, going to be the starting shortstop. Freddie Freeman, he's going to be in the bench. All right, that goes to show how deep this team is. John Smoltz, Glavine, again, part of that big three. Luis Gonzalez, broke my heart, 2001, if you know, you know. One of those not talked about enough in the steroid era, produced big numbers. Again, part of my fandom, wanted to include him, even if it was, in the bench, and there he is. Brian McCann, solid catcher, will be backing up Joe Torre, which I have a soft spot for due to being the Yankees manager pretty much in my core fandom. So I definitely want him in there as well. Phil Niekro, Huston Street, he'll be the setup man. And there's the rest of the roster here. Again, some people who might not have played for the Braves may have played for expansion teams, most of the time, like Al Leiter, and wanted to fit them in there. And there is the Braves. So I'm going to end this video here. I know this is a long one, so I can do the American League. So stay tuned, please. And I'll be doing that here shortly.